Hello everyone and welcome to Rajput, Jain and Associate. Today in this video we will discuss about LUT in GST. So what is LUT? So the full form of LUT is Letter of Undertaking. It is a document that exporters can file to export goods or services without having to pay taxes. Under the new GST regime, all exports are subject to IGST, which can later be reclaimed via a refund against the taxes paid. Given the difficulties faced by many exporters in processing of tax refunds, alternate options can seem very attractive. An LUT spares exporters the effort of pursuing a refund and eliminates the blocking of funds by way of tax payments. Its filing can be done online, making it super easy and quick. So under the CGST rules 2017, any registered person can furnish a bond or LUT in the form of GST RFT 11 and export goods without the payment of IGST. Thus, they can apply for LUT if they have intended to supply goods or services to India or overseas or to an SEZ, are registered under GST and wish to supply goods without the payment of IGST. Next, we will discuss about the documents required for obtaining LUT under GST. So firstly, there is a requirement of LUT cover letter requesting for the acceptance and the same be duly signed by an authorized person. An LUT can be submitted by anyone registered under GST provided they have not been prosecuted for tax evasion exceeding Rs 250 lakhs or any other offence under the CGST Act or the IGST Act 2017 or any other prevailing statute. Apart from this, there is a requirement of copy of GST registration, PAN card of the entity, KYC of the authorized person, Form GST RFT 11, copy of IEC code, a cancelled check, and lastly the authorized letter. Next we come on to the process for filing LUT certificate. So the first step is furnishing an LUT in GST refund process is to logging into your profile on the GST portal. Under the Service tab, the User Services drop-down has the option of Furnish Letter of Undertaking. Once the same is selected, the first thing to do is to select the financial year. This is where a manually furnished LUT can also be uploaded in PDF or JPEG format. Next, a self-declaration must be filed in which one undertaking is provided. Then they need to complete the export of goods or service within 3 months of the date of issue of export invoice or such further period as may be allowed by the Commissioner of GST. Apart from this, the applicant shall adhere to the GST laws with respect to exports, and in case of failure to export, they need to pay the IGST along with the interest at the rate of 18% from the invoice date to the date of payment of IGST. Apart from that, the applicant would be required to fill in the name of 2 independent witnesses along with their occupation and addresses. In the next screen, the applicant shall enter the place of filing. Once this procedure is completed, the same will be previewed in a form. The application can be signed with a registered digital signature certificate or via an electronic verification code. Both of these options will appear on the form. Once signed and submitted, the form cannot be edited. After this, the applicant shall download the Letter of Undertaking application from the GST portal. Now next comes the benefits of filing LUT with the GST department. So by opting for the LUT, an exporter can export goods and services without having to pay taxes. If this option is not opted for, the exporter will have to pay taxes on their export and later claim a refund on the zero rated exports. The LUT ensures that the exporters don't have to go into the trouble of claiming a refund or following up with the GST department. Much of the time is saved by avoiding the refund routine. Till the refund is received, any amount paid as the taxes will remain blocked, and in case of regular exports, a certain amount will perpetually be blocked in incoming tax refunds. An LUT also frees up the working capital, particularly important for the SME exporters struggling with the financing and the working capital issues. The LUT is also beneficial for the regular exporters, and an LUT once filed remains valid for the entire financial year. The process of filing the LUT and its acceptance by the department has been made quite easy, and the entire exercise can be conducted online. the submission of a few supporting documents along with the specified LUT form is sufficient to set the ball rolling and help exporter save much needed working capital from getting stuck in tax refunds. Now there are certain important things to remember in LUT bond in GST. So let's look at some of the important information relating to LUTs. So an LUT remains valid for 12 months from the date of its submission. The LUT is accepted subject to certain conditions. Failing to comply with these can lead to the revocation of privileges that are associated with the said document. In such cases, the exporter would be required to furnish a bond. So a bond can also be furnished by entities that are not eligible to submit an LUT. It must be on a non-judicial stamp paper and be accompanied by a bank guarantee. The bond must cover the estimated tax liability based on the assessment of the exporter himself. An LUT is required to be filed on the letterhead of the registered person who intends to supply the said goods and service without the payment of IGST. The LUT must be duly applied for in the prescribed form GST RFD 11. It can be filed by the MD, company secretary, or any other authorized person of the entity. In case of partnership firm, the form can be filed by the partners of the said firm, or in case of sole proprietor by the proprietor himself. The bank guarantee accompanying the bond should not exceed 15% of the bond amount, and the same may be waived out by the juridical GST commissioner. Now lastly, we will discuss about some of the frequently asked questions on LUT. So first is why LUT is required. So an exporter furnishing LUT is required to furnish fresh LUT for each financial year. If the conditions mentioned in LUT are not satisfied within the time limit, the privileges are revoked and the exporter will have to furnish a bond. Next is what if LUT is not filed on time. So if the LUT is not filed, the exporter would be required to pay the requisite amount of tax while making export and then claim a refund to avail the benefit of zero rated exports. Next is LUT required for export of services? So it is not necessary for the client to file for LUT if they are exporting goods or services. If the client goes for LUT, then the person may supply goods or services under the bond or LUT without the payment of IGST and can claim the refund of unutilized input tax credit. Next, what is the place of filing LUT? So, an LUT is required to be filed on the letterhead of the registered entity who intends to supply a good or service without the payment of tax. The LUT must be duly applied for in the prescribed GST RFD 11 form, and the same can be filed by any representative of the entity. Next, who can be the witnesses in LUT? So for filing LUT in GST portal, who can be an independent witness in case of a company? Any person can be a witness. There are no strict rules regarding who can be a witness for the application, so you can even ask your employees to witness the same. Next, can we file LUT after the due date? So yes, as per the law, LUT is required to be filed by the 31st March to be eligible for the next financial year. However, usually system allows it to be filed after that as well. So for example, for financial year 2021-22, LUT should be filed by 31st March 2021 and you can export the said amount of goods and services in the said financial year without the payment of IGST. Now, is it mandatory to mention LUT number on invoice? So in GST invoice for goods and services exported without payment of GST, it should be mentioned on the invoice that it is supply meant for export under LUT without payment of IGST. Now next is what is RFD 11 under GST. So form RFD 11 is a form for furnishing of bond or letter of undertaking for the export of goods or services. Next is when should a LUT be filed. So the GST LUT is to be submitted by all GST registered goods and service exporters. The exporters who have been prosecuted for any offence and the GST evasion exceed Rs 250 lakhs under CGST or IGST Act or any existing laws are not eligible to file GST LUT. So this was all about LUT under GST Act. In case of any query, contact Rajput, Jain and Associates. Thank you.